Hello, my dear students, and welcome back to English Language Integrated Skills. Today, we are in the meeting number 6, lecture number 6. This is teacher Taha Abu-Horia, and in this lecture, we are going to discuss the reading skills. What are we going to study and discuss throughout this lecture? We'll start by introduction to reading, reasons for poor comprehension, how to have good comprehension, types of reading, advantages of skimming, and finally, reading model. Reading skills. Why reading is important? Why do you think that reading is actually important for us as a student and after we graduate to be in the work market when we have a job in the future? Why do you think reading is important? Because in everyday business world, you have to read texts like emails, memos, journals, reports, books, and so forth. So that is why reading is important. From this point, because we are going to read texts, different types of texts in the way we are in the future when we get a job, when we go to the work market, and also as a student, when you are still a student, we are going to read different texts, different types of texts in our books. So that's why reading is important. And from this step, we have to be successful in reading. So we have to know and understand what are the skills of reading. Before reading, determine your purpose and then decide whether scan the writing, or read every word of the text. So the step before we started our reading, we have to determine, we have to define what is the purpose from my reading. Why am I reading this piece of text? Why I'm reading this text? And after I decide what is the purpose from reading, I will decide whether to skim this text or to scan it. And we'll come to know what's the difference and what is the meaning for both skimming and scanning. There are different types of reading of the text writing, or read every word of the text. Sometimes we need to read every single word of the text. Let's move to the reasons behind or for poor comprehension. Why do you think we get sometimes poor comprehension or poor understanding or bad understanding? We don't understand a lot from the text after we read. Why do you think? What are the reasons behind that? Actually, it is one of these three reasons. Actually, either the reasons for poor comprehension is either for lack of concentration, which means while I'm reading the text, I do not concentrate. I do not focus on the text. And absolutely and naturally, something normal. If you do not focus on the text while you are reading, you will get poor comprehension. You will not understand what the message or the idea that the writer wants to say in his text. So if you lack concentration, if you miss concentration or focus, that means you will get poor comprehension. The second point, which is the second reason for poor comprehension or bad understanding, is the inability to understand information. Sometimes I pay attention and focus. I have the concentration element while I'm reading. But even though I have what? I do not understand while I'm actually focusing on the text that I'm reading. I actually have I don't understand. Why do you think that this happened with me? It's actually because the inability of understanding the information. Either because of the style of the writer, because writers themselves, they have different styles in their writing. So the writer is writing about this point from one aspect while you are understanding this in different way. Or if the writer himself is writing normally, but I, as a reader, I do not understand the message that the writer wants to say. This is going to lead me to a poor comprehension. This is the second reason. The last reason for poor comprehension is not knowing the meaning of words. And this is actually very common with most of the students. I have heard many students, they said, "Teacher, we hate reading because when we read a passage or a paragraph or an essay, after we finish, we get a lot of difficult words, new words that we are unfamiliar with them. We are just get messed because it's the first time to hear and to have a look at these words. They are all new words and new vocabulary. So we get messed. We don't understand. So this point actually is one of the reasons and one of the common reasons that is going to lead me as a reader to poor comprehension or poor understanding, because I come across some new words that I do not understand their meanings. Okay, let's move to how to overcome this problem and having a good comprehension. How can we have a good understanding or a good comprehension for my reading? The answer for this question is these 5 points. These 5 points are going to make my understanding better, because I am going to have a better understanding. By these points, number 1, underline difficult words. We said that I will have poor comprehension because I find that many new words I do not understand and I do not know their meanings because they are new for me, difficult. What is the solution to have a good comprehension? Underline them. Number 1, underline difficult words, and what to do with them? Look them up in the dictionary or try to understand them from the context, from the text, from the previous words and the words that comes after. So this is the first step or the first point that will help me to have a good comprehension. Underline the difficult words and look them up in dictionary or try to understand them from the text. Sometimes you have the dictionary. You are allowed to use the dictionary, but sometimes, like when you are in the exam, you will not allowed to use dictionary. So try to understand them from the text. And when I say understanding them from the text, which means try to look at the words that comes before the words that is difficult for you and the words that comes after this word. The words or the phrases that comes before the difficult word and the words that comes after the difficult words. And this will help me and will help us to understand the meaning of this difficult word. The second point is, after you finish reading, write quickly the points. And this is very helpful point. After you read a passage or a paragraph or an essay, especially with long text, directly after you read, do not stop and imagine and your mind is going to go to another point. No. After reading, try to write quickly, just quickly and simply, main points, the points that you have read and you have found in the text. It will help me to have a clear picture to the message that is in the text, what the writer wants to tell me as a reader. You will understand them by getting the main points of the text. So by writing the main points after reading the text, directly after reading the text, it will help me to understand and have good comprehension. The third point is skim the text before starting to read it. And skimming actually is just to read in a very general way, just to understand, like reading the headings. And by skimming, we are just reading quickly, not slowly. We are just reading quickly the main points to understand the main idea or the controlling idea that is controlling the whole text that I'm reading. So skim the text before starting to read it. You are going to read it, okay? But before you start reading the text, try just to have just a general image for the general text, for the whole text. After that, start reading the text, because it will help me to understand everything that is inside the text. Also, number 4, the point number 4 that helped me to have a good comprehension is by predict or guess the words or the ideas with close reading to have better understanding. This actually is also a helpful point for me to have a good comprehension. Try to predict or guess the words, the meaning of the words or the ideas. Sometimes the writer wants to send some ideas to the reader, to his readers. But sometimes some readers find it difficult to understand. So try to guess or imagine or predict the words and the ideas with close reading to have better understanding. How? For example, if you are reading a story, imagine yourself that you are living inside this story, as if you are actually one of the members that are in this story. Try to be imagining. Try to give your mind an image for the words or the ideas or the events that happens in the text. And by this, believe me, it will be very helpful to understand everything in the text. The last point to have a good comprehension is by varying your reading speed. The speed of your reading should be varied, and that is according to the requirement, to the need, according to the text itself, to the type of the text. Sometimes you are reading, so your reading speed should be varied. Sometimes I'm reading with slowly, very slowly, because the text itself is very complicated, very difficult. So, and I have to understand every single word in the text. In this way, the speed of my reading should not be fast. It should be slow. So I'm going to vary my speed according to the requirement of the reading. On the other hand, if I'm reading a text and this text is like an essay on newspaper. In newspaper. Once I'm reading on newspaper, my reading speed is going to be different. Why? Because I'm just going to have a skimming reading. The type of the reading is going to be different because the requirement to read this text is different. I'm not going to read every single word in this essay because I do not need to understand every single word in the passage or in the essay. I want just to have a clear, the main point, have understanding for the main point or the message behind the text. Okay, let's move. Now we are going to discuss the types of reading. The types of reading. Actually, we have different types of reading. But in this lecture, as students, what we need now is to understand these 4 types of reading. 4 types of reading. Actually, there are more than 4, but what we want to study and understand of the types of reading are just these 4 types. Number 4 is skimming. Number 2, scanning. 3, intensive reading. And finally, extensive reading. Skimming, scanning, intensive reading, and extensive reading. Let's go through them and understand the differences between each type of reading. Let's start by number 1, which is skimming, coming from the word skim. Skimming. Skimming means reading quickly. So the speed of our reading in the skimming is quickly, not slowly. And this is going to help us to understand that here we are not going to understand to read every single word because we do not need to understand the details. We want just to get the main ideas. So, reading quickly to get the main points but not details. This is what we mean by skimming. Skimming means reading quickly to get the main points but not details. As when we are reading newspapers or magazines or something like that. The second type of reading is scanning. The scanning type of reading is reading slowly and at the same time carefully. We are here reading slowly because we are looking for something particular, specific, and at the same time carefully. We are reading carefully and slowly. Why? Looking for particular information. And scanning, actually, it means close reading. We are reading and we are paying attention to something important. This type of reading is actually when you are, for example, in the exam and you have a text and below this text you have a number of questions. After you have a general reading for the text, you read the first question and then you will come back to the text to find out the answer of this question. When you read looking for this particular answer for question number 1, you are going to use this type of reading, which is scanning, because here you are reading slowly and carefully because you want to answer this question, looking for particular information. You want just to answer this question. That's why you are going to use the scanning reading. Okay. Type number 3 is the intensive reading. Intensive reading, it means reading closely to find out as much as possible. The first one we said that it's looking for particular information and it's close reading. Intensive reading is also reading closely, but it's more than scanning. It's reading closely to find out as much as possible. And this is actually for us as a student, for you as a student, when you read a subject, a book, and you are supposed to get all the information from this text or this book. In this case, you are going to read this text or this book not one time. You are going to study it one time and again the next time, another time, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. So you are going to read it different and few times. You are repeatedly going to read it again and again and again. In this way, you are actually using intensive reading, because here you are supposed to understand as much as possible, as much as you can. You have to understand everything in this passage or in this text. So, you are going to use intensive reading. Okay? Let's move to the last one, which is the extensive reading. This type of reading is the reading broadly. You are not here focusing about something. It's broadly reading. You're reading broadly for general and interest or for fun. And this is just when you are in your free time and you are just reading for entertainment or for general interest or for fun. When you are reading like jokes, or when you are reading short stories or novels, in this case you are not reading with clues closely. You are not reading closely and paying attention to particular information. You are just reading extensively. The opposite is intensively. You are reading one time and then you repeat it again. You finished reading the text. After you finish, you come back to the beginning and read it again. And after you finish, you read it again and again and again. But reading extensively is the opposite. You are reading, and while you are reading, you don't. Your purpose behind reading is just for fun and entertainment. Let's move now to the advantages of skimming. The first type of reading, which is skimming, it has some benefits or advantages. Actually, it's one of these 3 points that the skimming type of reading is it helps to know who the audience is. When you are reading a text and you are using the skimming way or the skimming type, the type of reading which is skimming, by this way you are just skimming the whole text. By skimming the whole text, you will get different advantages. You will get different benefits. Number one, this kind of reading, it will help you to understand who the audience is. And the audience, which means the readers. The writer, when he writes his passage or his text, he wants a specific or a group of people to read his text. When you read it using the skimming way, this will help you to understand who are the audience or the readers that the writer wants his text to be read by. Like either professionals, just professionals are going to use this text, are going to read it, or scientists, or for public people, anyone. And this is according to the text itself. The text itself. Number two, the second advantage is it helps actually to understand the kind of the text. When you skim it, you will have a general look at the text, and this will help you to understand the kind of the text. What's the kind or the type of the text that you are reading? Whether it's a letter, a report, an article, or whatever. So in this case, you are going to understand what type of text you are reading, and who the audience that are going to read this text, whether professional scientists or public speaker, public people, or whatever. The third advantage of skimming is that it helps to understand the purpose of the writer, what the writer wants by his text. The writer himself, when he writes, what he wants, what did he want to say, or what did he want to deliver throughout his text? Either to describe something, to make the reader imagine himself inside the actions that he is giving, like when he is giving a description of something, or giving like a story or whatever, like a description, or whether the purpose is to inform, to give new information, to inform the readers by something, or for entertainment. Sometimes the purpose of the writer is just for entertainment, when he is giving just short stories or novels, or when he is just giving jokes, or like when he's writing poetry for fun, for entertainment. So it's these are the points that the skimming has as an advantages from skimming. 3 points: to know the audience, and the kind of the text, and the purpose of the writer. Pay attention to these 3 points. Thank you so much. I hope that you understand everything, and once you have any question, we will come to the class, to the actual class, Google Classroom. I want you to participate, and if you have any question, please do not hesitate to ask. The assignment in this lecture is Unit 14 and 15 in reading section. The assignment is Unit 14 and 15, 2 units, 14 and 15 in reading section. I hope everything is clear. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I was with you, teacher Abu-Horia. Thank you so much, and goodbye.